The Team Never Quit podcast is sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. You could get a low intro APR on balance transfers with their Platinum credit card. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. Our members are the mission. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Happy New Year's. Seeing you guys back in the studio for the beginning of the year is always fun.
23.
How was y'all's holiday?
23 and me.
We had
and me. 23 and me.
We had a really low-key holiday, which was awesome. I like low-key holidays, so
Same.
Yeah.
Just chill, which is always nice to just take
Although
a break.
I have to say, Marcus, ever since he was in high school, has done this like polar plunge type thing on Christmas Eve. A lot of people do it on New Year's Eve, but Marcus and his friends from high school have been doing it on Christmas Eve, which happened to be the coldest day, I think, in history.
It was recorded history
of Houston.
Yeah.
In the Houston area.
Guess who was in the water?
And
This dude right here, and my oldest boy.
Yeah.
Everybody else punked out.
Literally, because all
Bitches,
of
man. They
his
didn't even come
friends,
anywhere near it, dude.
no matter where they are, like in the world, all of his friends do it at midnight, and they text each other pictures or whatever. And I kept saying, babe, are you sure they're going to do it tonight? It's freaking cold. Like I think it was 12 degrees.
I was so reassured in the confidence of my friends. I was like, hell yeah, every one of them.
Oh yeah,
hardcore.
He like gave me this.
Not this year.
Yeah, Marcus
They're
gave me
getting
this.
soft.
No.
No, he said, of course they're doing it. Basically, like I was calling them.
Punks.
Yeah,
you're welcome
punks.
for that.
And
For my friends, you're welcome, guys.
So Marcus and Hunter run out to our pond, which is not right next to our house, and they run barefoot, jump in the pond, breaking a thin layer of ice, come back. I mean, I thought they were going to get sick for sure. None of his other friends did it.
Yeah.
None of them. So
right.
I have to call
Call
them
them
out.
out.
And let me tell you something. I literally have more time underwater than you have on the toilet your entire life. Think about that.
Hey, I don't know, man.
Perspective.
That's a tough combo.
And I'm talking about when Hunter and I came out of that water. I was so proud of my son. I was like, that's a man right there. What's up? Woo.
How brutal.
Bro, I almost didn't make it back.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. My shit started slowing down. My stuff started slowing down real hard. And my feet went... And I started laughing. I couldn't get my robe. I had that Obi-Wan Kenobi robe. I was trying to get that sucker on. No.
And 7 days later, it was 80 degrees.
I know, literally a week later. It was insanity.
All right.
You guys
All right,
have
sorry.
any
We had to
big
tell
any
you
big
about
goals
that.
for the year for you guys? Any New Year's resolutions, anything like that?
This is the first year I've never done a resolution because I'm not really great at keeping them.
Keeping it. That's fair.
So
That's fair.
I just figured I would fly by the seat of my pants.
Mine's always I have to keep my Christmas spirit throughout the year.
I like that.
My Christ spirit throughout the year. Like I said, I lost it the next day that one time.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So you kind of got to wait.
Trying to keep it.
Yeah, but so I'm still going on that one.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, we've got a great guest in store for you guys. But before I do the intro, let's kick it off with a Patreon question of the day. If you could only watch one TV show or one movie for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I feel like that's a loaded question.
Oh,
man.
absolutely it is.
What do you got,
David,
Dave, what
go
do you
for
got,
it.
man, on
Yeah.
that?
Well, I just watched it last night, probably for the 25th time, and it's got to be Patton.
Oh,
With-
yeah.
Well,
Dorothy
that's a
Scott.
good one too, man. You know, because it's got some history and some length. Mine was going to be Band of Brothers or Lonesome Dove. I always have to go with those because it's just timeless. That's like a holiday season movie for us too.
I'm a Lonesome Dove all the way kind of girl. I've watched it like since it came out. I
Yeah.
mean, I freaking love that movie, and it's so long you can drag it on. So that's mine for sure. What about you?
Back in the day, I would have said Apocalypse Now, but the point I am in my life right now is definitely Rango, hands down.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't either.
That's a good one.
You seen it?
You haven't seen Rango?
Uh-uh.
Oh, you're kidding me. You're killing me, guys.
Hey, I stand corrected, brother, man. I put that on the list.
We're gonna
Matter of
watch it
we'll watch
tonight.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. It's got Johnny Depp. It's an animated feature, and it's just a great story.
It
It's
is
a great Old West story.
All right, check.
I'm gonna have to watch that tonight.
All right, we'll check it out.
If it's got
Yeah.
Johnny Depp in it, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
I'm going That 70s Show or Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Ooh.
Long seasons.
That's not a movie.
It could be
You
a movie
said
or TV show.
Well, that changes everything.
Well,
Well, we said
that's the
TV
question.
show.
TV show or movie? You got a TV
Lonesome
show?
Dove.
Lonesome Dove is a 2-part movie.
Oh, here we go.
Well, that's kind of like a TV show.
No.
And it's like 9 hours or something like that.
All
So
right.
it's basically a TV show.
Whatever. That's
You can't
cheating.
get mad at somebody else.
That's cheating.
I mean, if we're
You can't get mad.
yeah, it's not the same.
Oh my gosh, this is awesome. Hey, thanks for the Patreon question. You guys check it out, patreon.com/Team Never Quit. You can get access to behind the scenes content, some really cool exclusive swag, and a great community of people that support the show. We appreciate y'all's support. We've got a great guest in store for you guys. David Kniess is a veteran and the director of the documentary The Gift, a story about Corporal Jason Dunham, who died in Iraq as he jumped on a grenade to save his fellow Marines. And David is joined by Lieutenant Colonel Trent Gibson, who was Dunham's company commander at the time. David and Trent, welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Well,
Yeah, we just want to hear
this
y'all
is
tell
a
the story.
yeah, this is a unique one, man, because you guys are covering down on one of the brothers, so and getting their story out, and that's what I want everybody to know. So, what is it? First of all, introduce yourselves if you guys wouldn't, and tell a little bit about your, just who you are, and then we'll get into it while we're here.
I'm David Kniess. I'm a Navy veteran. I've worked in television probably since, '96 now. It's been over 25 years. I've worked as a producer, director, and I met Jason Dunham the year before he deployed. I was on a red-eye flight east, headed home to see my folks, and I sat next to this young Marine. We stayed up all night and just talked. We hit our connection. I shook his hand. I said, "Hey, man, take care of yourself." And fast forward 2004, I was going through the website somebody took out, icasualties.org. Started going down the list, and his name popped out. I couldn't remember his last name, but all the other things lined up. 29 Palms, small little town in upstate New York, outside Buffalo. So I Googled his name and hit the end. I sat down and wrote a story about it, gave it to a teacher of mine from high school. He put it on their message board. Some of that story ended up in his hometown paper. And Deb Dunham, his mother, called me and left a message. And I didn't call her back. I just didn't know what to say to her. And 2 weeks later, she called again, and I let it go to voicemail. And I literally sat there for a half hour, and I just kept telling myself, you need to call this woman. So I picked up the phone, talked to her and her husband for 2 hours. Within a month, I was on a plane to upstate New York, and that was the start of it.
So you just haphazardly ran into this guy. Nothing happens by coincidence. We all,
Yeah.
once you get old enough, you know that.
Right.
Yeah. So the boss man crossed y'all's paths
Yeah.
on an airplane ride.
That's really cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really believe in that. You know, like you said, when you're young, you don't think about that stuff. But as you get older, those things, those coincidences aren't really coincidences. I think there are things that happen in your life, and they're there for a reason. I mean, I think there's a reason I sat next to him that day. And I think all these years, 18 years later, that reason was to tell his story,
Sure.
you know.
That's exactly what that
And all
is.
his Marines believe the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Man, life gets in the way when you're young. If you're a guy, you know, everything else gets in the way. So for sure.
Yeah.
Gibbs, how about you, brother?
How I got here, or my role in all this.
Yeah.
You're rolling all of
Yeah,
it.
you're rolling all this.
So I was Jason's company commander, and like Dave, I had a lot of trepidation in making that first call to Deb. But I knew it was the right thing to do, and so I eventually overcame my fear and made that call. And I got to say that as tragic as that loss was, that it could not have happened to a better family, because they are simply amazing human beings and great Americans. And within moments of connecting with Deb on the phone that night from Iraq, she made me feel completely at ease. And by the end of the call, I felt like I was family. And that continues to this day.
That's awesome. It's always so important, and it's just that feel good when you have the family support on something.
Well, he said that. The way he said that is right on point in the
Yeah.
military world, man. A bad thing happened to a great family. Yeah, but yes, it does. Especially those of us in the service industry. That's just how it works. I mean, usually, and in the wartime and everything we go to, we always lose our best. They're always the ones that get snatched away. And what that does is it shines a light on the families that produce that kind of thing. So, yeah, good on you. Okay, David, so tell us what. Yeah, back it up a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry, Marcus. I was just gonna capstone on that. Having the Dunhams in my life is enriched my life far beyond what I ever would have imagined, and just simply being connected to Dunham's story has changed me in the way I see things.
That's awesome.
What year? When did this go down again? What year was that? No, 09?
04.
2000, 2004.
Oh, wow.
Excuse me.
Red Wing.
Yeah,
April 14th, 2004.
Those are some interesting years for sure. All right, well, let's back it up there then.
Yeah.
Well, basically after meeting the Dunhams and sitting down with them, I told them, I said, I work in TV, I'm an editor. When these guys come back, I'm going to start sitting them down and interviewing. I'll put a little keepsake video together, and at this point I hadn't even learned about what he had done. I got a phone call from a buddy of mine who was a Marine Corps Cobra pilot, kid I grew up with. And he said, have you seen the Wall Street Journal today? And I said, no. He said, that kid you told me about's on the front page. Do you know what he did? And I said, no, what happened? He said, go pick up the paper. So I went and picked up the paper. And that was the first time I actually learned about what had happened. And I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. So I spoke to Deb and Dan, and I said, when these guys come back from deployment in September, I'm going to start sitting them down and let them tell good stories about Jason. And I'll put a video together for you, which I did. And so in September of 2004, I headed up to 29 Palms with all the other family members and kind of sat there until 2 a.m. The buses rolled in, and that was my first connection with them. I had met one other Marine who was wounded, Adam Walker, who ended up coming back to convalesce. He had been shot 3 days after Dunham during the kickoff of the Battle of Usaba. But in that time, when these guys came back, I just started hanging out with them. And they essentially became, in my heart, they were my little brothers, So I started having down the house, barbecues, cookouts. And then a lot of those Kniess Marines kept pushing me to do a documentary, because I had done a short documentary on my teacher's return to Kniess. We went back to Kniess and hiked up this hill, 861 there. So I started thinking about it, and then I started interviewing about 6 guys from Kilo. And it was hard. It was very hard. Coming off a Kniess Vietnam documentary kind of prepared me for this, because that was my first experience of actually sitting down with someone who had been to war, these old Vietnam guys, and really learning how to have that conversation and gaining their trust. So I sat these guys down.
That's the toughest thing.
It is.
I'm not going to let you glaze over that one. That's the hardest thing for an outsider to do. One, you don't even speak the language, because we have one. You can bet your ass we have one, and each branch has their own slang, the way we speak it, from body language just immediately to when you walk in. So that those of you that take the time to learn all that, it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And my whole goal was to tell this story. I was so blown away by this kid, and he was one of those kids you meet, and it's only happened to me twice in my life. You're at a party or somewhere, and you don't want the night to end. You're like, man, what a great friggin' kid, So when I found out what happened, it was just, it was crushing, because you're like, not that kid. So I started becoming friends with all of his Marines, and this is before I decided to do the documentary. And then finally I did, and I started interviewing these guys, and it was hard, man. It was emotional. They weren't ready. This was fresh. And so I kind of put it on the shelf. And another case Marine and myself started a scholarship foundation for Jason. So I put all my time into that. But every year, you know, on April 14th and the 22nd, because he was hit on the 14th and his parents took him off life support 8 days later at Bethesda. During that time, every year, I would think about that documentary I never finished. You know, I still had the hard drives on the shelf and I would stare at them. And I'm like, you got to finish that, man. You got to finish that. And around 2019, I finally called Trent and I said, hey, man, this is what I want to do. I want to tell Jason's story, but I want you and your Marines to tell it, because it's not just about Jason. It's about everything that has affected all of you over those years. Because, you know, in these 18 years of being friends with the Dunham family and all these Marines, you know, I've told people I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, and I've seen the ugly. You know, suicide, divorce, drug addiction, all these things. And 18 years later, that has time to have everything sink in. And so I called Trent and he said, call Deb and Dan. I called Deb and Dan. And right away they were like, we've been approached by all kinds of people to do things. He's like, we're under contract with a film company now to tell his story. And that contract runs out at the end of the month. And I said, well, this is up to you. But if you don't renew that option, it will help us. And they said, done. We're not renewing it because we want you to tell the story, because we know what this means to you and you're not going to screw it up. So they put their faith in me and I just kept pushing forward. You know, I started, basically what I did was I tried to get the veteran community involved, right? I kind of looked at grunt style as a framework. I mean, that guy started selling t-shirts in his garage. Then, you know, that kind of went over to law enforcement, first responders, and every guy in America who didn't go in but wanted to, wants that t-shirt, right? So that guy built a following. So that was my plan, you know. So I talked to Vince Vargas, who are producers, and I said, hey man, I said we need to reach out to Jocko. And he said, I got his email. So I emailed Jocko on a Sunday night and I said, listen, man, this is who I am. This is why I'm doing it. How would you like to have two Marines who were standing next to Corporal Dunham when that grenade went off and survived? And Jocko responded immediately the next morning and set it up. So I started to get people like him and get eyes on it. And I started pushing and doing podcasts, word out there. And out of nowhere on Christmas, I get a phone call from this Marine, Anthony Taylor. And we spoke for 2 hours. And he asked all the right questions. Who are you? How do you know Jason? Why are you doing this? And at the end of that 2-hour conversation, he said, listen, man, I want to come in for the whole thing. I said, excuse me? He said, I want to pay for this entire film. He said, I can do that. I've become very successful in real estate, finance. He was a Marine. I'm a Marine. You need to tell this story. And that was Christmas.
Hey guys, let's take a second to thank our sponsors over at Navy Federal Credit Union. The holidays are finally behind us, but credit card debt might still be a little high, especially after the holidays. You know, Christmas, we might go a little crazy sometimes spoiling our loved ones, but that's okay. You guys can partner up with Navy Federal Credit Union to pay down credit card debt. You can even get a low intro APR on balance transfers with their Platinum credit card. It's their lowest rate card, and it is a great tool to pay down debt. And Navy Federal can even help you get started on your next home improvement project. They offer a home equity line of credit with convenient access to funds when you need them at a variable rate. You can also get a fixed rate equity loan that has set monthly payments for large purchases. So it's a brand new year. You're thinking about upgrading the house. Why not take advantage of that? Consolidating debt with a home equity loan could also streamline and lower your monthly payments. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. Our members are the mission. Insured by NCUA, Equal Housing Lending. Membership required. Loan subject to approval. Call 1-888-842-6328 for details about credit costs and terms. Home equity line of credit APR as low as 6.5% as of November 23rd, 2022.
things like that have happened over the last 2 years where people.
Merry Christmas, by the way.
Composer call me in Hollywood.
Merry Christmas.
Who called me? Who called me out of nowhere because he knew this guy, Dan Gabriel, who did Mosul documentary. And Dan's a former CIA guy who wanted to get into film. So he showed this composer our sizzle. And this guy called me and said, "Hey, man, I want to work on this. I want to compose all your music. And I'm not charging. I'm going to do it for free." So things like that have happened, and we've coined it the Dunham effect, because when we're down and we're like nothing's going to happen, something happens, And so Anthony stepped forward.
You can't believe what our people are tied into now.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Oh,
I mean, you can't believe that whole Marine Corps. That once our generation got back out and kind of materialized back into the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you got to understand where they snatched us and took us, man. They took us back to the beginning, freaking Babylon and Afghanistan. That's the freaking beginning. And then they left us there for a long time. And so when our guys got back, man, first of all, they just sat around. We didn't do anything. We kind of rested. Had a party, a quarantine, a housing, whatever. And now that we're back, each one of those have bled back into the community. So it's all a matter of just pulling the laces together or getting the word out, because it's there.
Yeah.
Like we got a guy or a girl, a brother or sister in something.
It's so cool.
It's the awesomest thing, man. It is. And I mean across the spectrum.
I've noticed, I said a good friend of mine, John Preston, he did some music for us for film. He's a Marine. He was with 2-7, but years ago, I started, I think it was 2013. He was trying to push his music. And I said, man, there's a movement out there, man. And this is the beginning of it. Now, here we are later. You got your podcast. Chaco's doing his thing. Mike Glover's doing his thing. Evan Hafer's doing his thing. But back then I said, there's a movement out there going on, man. I said, this isn't the Vietnam generation. The Vietnam generation came back and kind of just were stagnant. But our generation and the younger generations stood up and said, you know what? I'm not waiting for anyone. I'm going to go out and start this thing and teach guys how to surface therapy. I'm going to start this thing with dogs. I'm going to start this thing with horses. I'm going to do a podcast to talk about this stuff. Like Brian Chantos, I'm going to have a thing where I bring my Marines once a year and we're sitting around a fire and we're working horses and we're a unit again. And we're talking about our shit, because that's the stuff that helps them. So it's amazing to see what you and Jocko and all these people have done for the community. It just blows me away.
Dude, it's our generation.
Yeah.
We're a splice. I mean, we all melted together. That separation, I mean, when hip hop and all that, I mean, you want to get technical with it. That's what happened. And then the wars jumped off and we got hit.
Well, and also
that's why everybody went in. And I'm talking about, we didn't care what anybody looked like, came from, anything like that. Man, it was all about just and then where they took us, we were all we had. Everything was designed to kill us because they dressed us up accordingly. I mean, everybody could recognize what we were. You don't think that did something to us?
Well, the passion of 9/11 too. A lot
That's
of
what I'm
these
talking
guys were, they were in the service just before 9/11, and then it's like, so they sign up not knowing that they're going to be in a war. They sign up, pre-war time, and then when we were attacked, our country is attacked. That passion,
and we all were behind it.
Yeah.
So we got hit here.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone in America got slapped. So when they turned around, like, who's going to take care of that? They sent us, all of us. Imagine that.
Unleashed.
The freaking war. Oh, man.
And so, the civilians want to know our heroes.
They want to hear about it.
And they want to, we want to know.
Don't be ashamed to tell it. We got permission. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're right.
I mean, because before I met Marcus, I had no family in the military or anything like that. And I wanted to know, like, who all of our heroes are. It's not just, the one person that there's a movie made about or whatever, but, like, we want to show appreciation to everybody because America did unleash the dogs.
And they want to hear about it. They want to hear how badass it was. I'm telling you, because who do you think has to come rescue me? And every time a SEAL gets in trouble, Marines. Mm-hmm. I'm very open about it. Matter of fact, in modern day life and business, if I walk into a Marine, he's not trying to, if he won't go things, I'm like, hey, aren't you supposed to protect me?
And Army.
And your job is to come rescue me. So let me have this. I'll throw some guilt on him quick. But that's the way it is with us. I mean, we're different from the beginning to the end, and now that everyone's back, man, it created an environment that everyone wants to hear about it, and that's what you're doing. So bless you for it.
Yeah, and I was worried about the average person on the street who has nothing to do with the military, what the reaction would be. And surprisingly, from the colorist I had that colored the film to as recent as Saturday night, we won the Utah Film Festival for best documentary on Saturday night. But the people in the crowd, we did a Q&A afterwards that went, for an hour and a half. And there were people in there who had nothing to do with the military, and they said, "Man, this film really spoke to me because this isn't just about the military. It's about the human condition. Anybody who's been through a traumatic experience, lost a loved one, can relate to this story." So it was really refreshing to hear that. I'm like, okay, we're on the right track here because my whole, and I don't care what anybody thinks in the entertainment industry. All I care about is what Marines and sailors and airmen and soldiers think. The guys who have gone to war and sit down and watch this thing. There were two things that I hope to gain from this. One was to, for veterans at home who are still struggling, will watch this film and particularly listen to Mark Dean's story. Here's a Marine who was addicted to painkillers from his injuries in Iraq. When he was cut off from that, he went to the street and started buying pills and shooting them up. And from that, it went to meth, and he was on a hell train for a long time. And he pulled himself out of that. And he's doing great now. But I had always hoped that other veterans who are struggling and feel like they're trapped, watch it and say, well, hell, if this kid can do it, maybe I can do it too. And on the flip side of that, for civilians who watch it, I want them to have a better understanding of what it's like for young men and women to go to war. And, I referenced that thing where, and this, I didn't go to war, but, I'm coming home from boot camp and you got to wear your uniform, right? I'm fresh out of Great Lakes. And you always get that person that walks up to you to shake your hand and say, thank you for your service. And you're like, well, I didn't do anything, right? And I don't fault people for saying that, but I don't think they truly understand what those words mean, And my hope is after they watch this film, the next time they do that, they're going to understand what those words mean.
Oh, and for those young ones out that bothers, he's like, well, I hadn't done anything. I was like, oh, you will.
You signed up.
If somebody came up to you and threw one of those thank you for your service lines on you, even if you hadn't done something, it's coming. Mm-hmm. So save it for later. Yeah. When your ass starts to complain, saying no one ever, hey, I gave you one. You don't remember? That kind of thing. That's how that works. You know how it is in the military, man. We're our own breed. Crazy stuff just happens to us because.
So can you tell us about Trent? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
about
Trent,
Jason.
can you tell us about, let's hear about it.
Hear about Jason's story and who he was, where he came from, and all that. Like his actual, what the documentary is about.
You asking me?
You're asking Trent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jason came to us with 6 other NCOs from 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. The day after we got back from our post-deployment leave in September of 2003. So I completed EWS as a young captain in Quantico, and TMO was packing my trash, and I got a phone call from the battalion executive officer, now Brigadier General Anthony Henderson, and he said, hey, we need you over here, and you're flying out of LAX in 2 weeks. Roger that. So we drove west, bought a house on the road, dumped the house off on the wife, got on a bird, and flew to Iraq. Spent 3 months with Kilo in country.
Where are we all at now? Where'd y'all go in at?
We were in Karabilah, south of Baghdad at the time, doing stability and support operations.
Great times.
Yo, what's that?
I was like, great times, bro. Yeah, I know.
Well, shit, I mean, that's when we were rolling around in Humvees without doors.
How about that?
You know?
How about that?
Yeah.
That was completely different
Single
when we went
Humvee,
back in 06 and 07.
by yourself, alone and unafraid.
Oh, hey. That was the time. That I mean, okay, I say it sucked that we got thrown back there, but don't think that we didn't make it our time.
Yeah, for our listeners, 04 is really early.
Well, hell
So,
yeah. It was right when everything
yeah.
started kicking up.
It was
Because there's
Wild
two wars
West.
going on. Everybody who doesn't know anything
Yeah.
splices those together. Like
Mhm.
they don't know that there's a complete difference between the two when they came off, when they went on. So, but if you're in, you do. If you're one of us, you do.
In 04, just for the listeners, like context, I mean, that was like the Wild West. Years later, it's, you know, it was more traditional warlike.
It was a 20-year war.
But
we're talking about this is the beginning part of it.
Yeah, very Wild West.
No, that's exactly what it was. And that term itself, Wild West, was what we started using when we were preparing to go back. We knew that what we were going back into was not the same show that we had just left. And 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines was the first Marine infantry battalion to come back to Iraq for OIF 2 in 04. We were back stateside for 5 months and then pushed back in late February. I left on advance party with my late company gunny, Elia Fontecchio, on Valentine's Day of 04. And that's the Marine Corps' way of
oh yeah, I was about to say that's a special
appreciation for families.
Right? Hey, when do you want to send them? Frickin' Valentine's Day. When do you think?
Yeah. And anyway, so during those intervening months, we spent a few weeks on post-deployment leave and then came back. The day we came back, we had 30-something NCOs cross-deck from 3-4 to 3-7 because they were too short to redeploy with 3-4. So we knew that something was going up and that 3-7 would be going back quick. So anyway, we got 7 of those NCOs. And at the end of our first day back, we had a company formation just to put things in context for the Marines and welcome them back from leave and tell them to tighten up their bootlaces because we were about to hit the ground running. And also I wanted to recognize the 7 new members to the Kilo family that we'd gotten that day from 3-4. And so then I turned the formation over to the company first sergeant. And then I took those 7 NCOs aside there in the ditch by the barracks in 29 Palms. And I knew I needed to say something important to them. So I remembered what I told Kilo on the day I took command in Karabilah back in May of 03. And I told him that I believe in 3 things as a Marine, that I believe in leadership by example. I believe that in self-sacrifice for the greater good, and that one man can make a difference. I told them that's what they should expect from me, because that's what I'm going to expect from them. And one of those 7 Marines was Corporal Jason Dunham. And by mid-December, he had developed a reputation in the company as I hesitate to use the term natural leader, but that's where his instincts lied, because he was humble, he was empathetic, he was respectful, and he led by example, personal example. And I knew we were going back into an unconventional gunfight, and I didn't like the way the conventional task organization of the company had operated during those 3 months in Karabilah. And so I knew that I wanted 12 equally capable rifle squads within the company. So I dumped the company in a pile and instructed the first sergeant to put a list of 122 trigger pullers together by rank. And we only had 2 sergeants in the company at the time, a dozen corporals. All the rest were lance corporals and 30 brand new PFCs and privates. And I told him we're going to hold an NFL style draft. And I want you to start with Kilo 1. They get first pick, first round. Kilo 4 will get 4th pick, first round. And to make it equal, we'll just reverse it on the second round. So second round, 4th platoon, you get first pick. And we had 2 lieutenant platoon commanders at the time and 2 staff sergeant platoon commanders. And the one of those was Staff Sergeant Adam Walker, that Dave Kniess mentioned earlier, who had been wounded, who got wounded months later in Iraq after Jason. And then one of those was Staff Sergeant John Ferguson, who was the acting platoon commander for Kilo 4. And his first pick was Corporal Travis Struker, a young wrestler from Iowa. And his second pick for squad leader was Corporal Jason Dunham, even though he was a machine gunner, not at 0311, but 0331. And even though he hadn't been to combat, like so many Marines in the company, Ferg had seen a lot out of Jason, and he liked what he saw. So he was confident that Jason had the leadership qualities necessary to lead a rifle squad of American sons. And the combat experience was not a necessary prerequisite for Ferg. That's how Jason ended up as a squad leader.
How old was he?
He was, he was born in 81, so that he was, he was 23 by then. Right.
Guys, do you feel like it is harder to get in shape and stay in shape? Our sponsor, Nugenics Total T, is offering a complimentary bottle when you text 231-231 and enter our keyword T&Q. I don't know about you guys, but over the years, as I've gotten older, I've realized that I don't necessarily feel like my old self. I can't lose the weight like I was able to back in the day. I don't have the energy I used to have, and it just seems like I can't get in shape. Like back in the day, it was like not hard, and now I am like burning the candle from both ends, and it is a challenge. Well, here's the deal. You're not alone. It's not your fault. As men age, our bodies naturally lose free testosterone, the man hormone. It happens to every man and can make it more difficult to stay in shape and be energetic and active. So if you're looking for more energy to counter the negative physical effects of aging, Nugenics Total T Testosterone Booster with Testofen will help you turn back the clock, re-energize your workouts, get you better results at the gym, and help you look and feel.
All right, go ahead.
So Jason was one of our 12 squad leaders, and
you guys loaded up and pushed over what month in 04?
The main body, the battalion got there in late February.
Oh, in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, so 14th. That's right.
Yeah.
Full benefit.
Yeah.
So how long were y'all in country? What was y'all's primary rhythm when y'all were out there? Y'all's mission set when y'all were rolling out for him that led up to this? And how long were y'all in country?
Well, we were in country 7 months, standard deployment cycle for Marines. 2 weeks.
Man, there's no such thing as a standard deployment cycle for a freaking Marine Corps. Did you hear what that man just said?
So
especially in them days, bro.
So the intent was for a battalion to be doing their job for 6 months, and you get 2 weeks on the front end for arrival, staging, and relief in place, and then 2 weeks on the back end to turn over your zone to the incoming unit, and then process out. So 7 months. We got out of there in early September of 04.
I used to, just not to change the move, but watching y'all have to go through your rotation cycle when y'all would get pushed to the left or the right. Marines are the best because they're so squared the hell away. That's just a thing with them. I mean, even in the field. And the best part is when they get extended, because then it starts to run the wrong way. And the only way they can get rid of that anger and all that built up frustration is through discipline. And I mean, you'll watch a gunny I'm talking about when they have to shave, like you missed a spot. And just screaming. I mean, anything they can do to get that pressure off. Anything they can do. How long were y'all in country? You said 7 months, but I mean, before the Dunham got.
Okay. Yeah. So we took over the mission in early March from 1st to the 3rd Cav, U.S. Army. And we took our first battalion's casualties. I believe it was around St. Patty's Day.
Yeah.
And then, so we had been in country, we'd been in zone for a month because I had to give up 2 platoons to Lima Company. Lima Company was designated the battalion main effort up at the border checkpoint with Syria in the city of Husayba, right on the Syrian border. And so Captain Rick Gannon, he was lost on the 17th, 3 days after Dunham was hit. But he had Lima Company, and battalion commander told me I needed to give up two of my platoons to Lima just before we pushed over there. And I only had 4 platoons, and I was thanking the stars that I decided to make 4 platoons. So I actually had 2 good rifle platoons to give up and still keep some degree of capability within the company. And so being the main effort, you give them your best. And my best, because the platoons were all brand new and freshly reorganized, I gave him my best platoon commander, who was Lieutenant Dave Fleming with Kilo 1. And then I gave him one of my 2 unknowns. I had 2 brand new platoon commanders, Tim Burke, Kilo 3, and Brian Robinson with Kilo 4. So I gave him Kilo 4. It was an arbitrary pick. So I gave him 2 platoons, and then we went to work, and Rick Gannon went to work with 6 platoons up in Husayba. And so Kilo 4 was up there for a month, and one of the promises that Lieutenant Colonel Lopez had made me was, you got to give up 2 platoons, but after a month, once we get our feet on the ground and get things stabilized, then I'll give you one of those platoons back. So in early April, I got Kilo 4 back, and Rick Gannon, he got to pick which platoon he kept, and he kept Kilo 1. So I got Kilo 4 back, and then right after we got him back, we had a supplementary mission to provide security for a special operations / CIA unit that was operating out of the battalion firm base. So Lieutenant Robinson tasked that to Kilo 4-2, Jason Dunham. So Dunham got to be away from the flagpole for a while on independent duty with his platoon, or I'm sorry, with his squad. And then on the, I don't know, maybe the 13th of February, Robinson rotated another squad in there, and so got Dunham back. And on the afternoon of the 13th, when Lieutenant Colonel Lopez called me into his office and said, I need you to get me in zone tomorrow, because we're taking these 30 brand new Iraqi policemen who just went through our police academy, that he had stood up on his own volition, understanding what was needed. We had an attached military police platoon to the battalion. So he had those boys kick off a police academy for Iraqi police. He said, I want you to take these brand new police graduates, and I'm giving them all to Karabilah, and I want you to get them integrated into the police force, and I want you to plan a patrolling operation with them for 96 hours, 4 days. I'm sending you in zone. You're going to work shoulder to shoulder with the Iraqi police, and I want people of Karabilah to see that the Marines and the Iraqi police are here to protect them. So I went back and grabbed Lieutenant Robinson, because Kilo 4 was on the patrol schedule. And I said, I need a squad to get me in zone tomorrow with the battalion commander. We're going to the Iraqi police station, and then we're going to reconnoiter a patrol base for this 4-day company patrolling operation. And so Robinson grabbed Dunham and tasked him with the mission. And then Dunham turned to on mission prep. And he spent all day getting his guys ready for the mission. And the last thing he had to do was was write the patrol order, so in the morning he could brief his Marines on every single nut and bolt they needed to know to conduct the mission successfully the next day. And he was up, it was midnight, and it was me and him in the company CP and the radio operator behind me. And Dunham was sitting there bare chested in his utes and boots at this table in the CP. And his two fire team leaders, Bill Hampton and Josh Carbajal, walked in with the plate of chow that they had gotten from Midrats, our battalion mess section always put Midrats on at midnight for the units there in battalion C to ensure that Marines who were operating around the clock could get some chow at night. And they walked in with this plate of chow, and we looked up and said, "What's this?" And they said, "Well, you've been taking care of us all day. And so we wanted to make sure that, you're not taking care of yourself. We want to make sure that you at least eat something." And when I saw that unfold before my eyes, I knew that Dunham was the right choice as a squad leader, and that we had someone really special on our hands. Because any leader who inspires his subordinates through personal example to then return the favor and take care of him, that's a true leader. True leader.
Yeah.
And I thought I should get up and take a photo of him, but I was smoked. And in the end, I was just too tired and lazy to get up and get my fucking camera. And I regret not taking that photo. And I thought to myself, seeing what I just seen with his team leaders, I thought, what would I ever do if I lost a Marine like that? And the next morning, we rolled out on the way out, it had become company SOP in the previous week after we lost our first Marine to a massive enemy ambush up in Sada. As we rolled out, every freaking patrol performed an IA drill, immediate action drill for enemy contact to a flank. And so 4-2, they rehearsed it and they performed the IA drill, but they didn't get it quite right. And Dunham knew it. So he called his team leaders in, and they came up to the hood of my Humvee, and we talked about what they had done wrong and what they needed to do to correct it. And Dunham had this look on his face like he had let me down. But we had a mission to do. So I slapped him on the shoulder and I said, we'll fix it. But we got a job to do, so let's go do it. So we pushed out. And we got to the police station. We coordinated with the police chief, got everything set up. And battalion commander left for Lehman Company's position. And we set to reconnoitering an abandoned water treatment plant behind the police station that I was going to use as our patrol base for that patrolling operation with the Iraqi police. And in short order, we started hearing explosions to the west, which is where Lehman Company was. And we assumed that Lehman Company was getting mortared again because they'd been getting mortared for 2 weeks straight every day and hadn't been able to get those guys. And so Dunham came running up the ladder well to the roof where I was. And I said, what do you think? He said, I think Lehman's getting hit. And I said, well, let's go get those motherfuckers. So we ran out of there and started running up the MSR to the west. And Dunham's radar operator, Jason Sanders, called our vehicles that had been satelliting security around us, and they linked up with us. And by the time we got into the VIX, I then had access to the battalion radio net, and we knew that it wasn't Lima Company getting hit, but it was Lieutenant Colonel Lopez's patrol had been ambushed halfway to Lima's position. And by the time I put two and two together, an RPG flew over the vehicle in front of me, almost taking out one of Dunham's second fire team leader, Josh Carbajal. And so we unasked the VIX and got up against a wall for cover. And I told Dunham we needed to clear out that village. He says, all right, so you go with, he told me to go with Carbajal, and he was going to go with Hampton and Ferg. So he split his two fire teams up, and I started clearing out the village from north to south on the west end with Carvajal's team, and Dunham was working with Hampton's team on the eastern half of the village. And in short order, Dunham's and Hampton's section hit a stack of vehicles that was trying to get through the village but not get ambushed like Colonel Lopez's unit had. So they were, local vehicles saw that there was combat action going on the MSR, so off the MSR, and started working their way around, via a detour through that village. And Ferguson assessed the situation and told Dunham we need to start checking these vehicles, because some of them most likely were not innocent civilians just trying to get out of trouble, but some of them were probably insurgents who made that trouble. And so Dunham went for the second vehicle in that stack, which was a white Toyota Land Cruiser with 4 military-age males in it. And if ever there was a target indicator in Iraq, it's a Toyota Land Cruiser with 4 military-age males. You can guarantee that whoever's in that vehicle is up to no good. And so Ferg was on the left side of that vehicle, and Dunham was on the right. And Dunham went for the driver's door, and the guy who was in the driver's door jumped out. Everyone jumped out of the vehicle, but the other 3 guys ran away. But the guy in the driver's seat jumped out and tried to choke Dunham. And so Dunham put a knee in his chest and took him to the ground. And Dunham was a big boy. He's no one I would ever choose to grapple with. And this guy who picked that fight, he was smaller than me, and I'm a pretty small guy. So the fact that that guy was willing to do that meant he was there to fight. Mm-hmm. He was there to fight Americans. And as that happened, Miller, who was on the left side of the vehicle, had called out a warning that there were weapons in the vehicle. And he saw what was happening with Dunham, so he went around to assist. And then Hampton, the fire team leader, came around to assist. Meanwhile, Ferg, the platoon sergeant, was trading shots with the 3 guys who had got out of the vehicle. They were shooting back at him. So Ferg was trying to provide cover and fire while this tussle was happening on the ground. And Miller and Hampton heard Jason call out, no, watch his hands. And then a blast engulfed all 3 of them. And the radio operator, Jason Sanders, was about 10 meters behind him and saw the whole thing, and he assumed they were all dead. And then out of that cloud of smoke and dust stumbled Miller and Hampton. And Sanders called guys to get up and grab them and get them behind cover and start treating them because they were bloody. And then he looked down the road, and then that guy who'd been in the driver's seat, the insurgent, he jumped up and he took a look at Sanders. And Sanders looked at him, and he turned to run, and Sanders put a mag in him. And then he ran up and grabbed Dunham, who was laying in a pool of blood, and drug him back to cover as he called for Ferg to cover him. And then Sanders got up on the battalion radio net and started calling for a casualty evacuation. And that was a really long day.
Was it what time was this in the morning?
Yeah. It was around
first thing we guys moving out.
Pushed at 08. It was probably 1000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all were on y'all's way out to a cop formation. Y'all were running with the police, right? Just to kind of give everybody.
No. It was we had already coordinated with the police, and I was just reconnoitering the patrol base.
Yeah.
And the battalion commander had headed up to Lima Company's position to pay them a visit, and just got hit on the way. And what had been happening in the days prior, there'd been a massive infiltration of enemy fighters into zone across the border. And the intel picture had not quite put it all together, but they had all come in as part of a coordinated effort to hit American forces throughout the zone, from Ramadi out all the way out west to Al-Qaim.
Yeah.
And so we had a significant enemy force in zone, but didn't quite know it yet.
Oh, well, they'd roll in. Back in those days, like I said, it was the Wild West. I mean, imagine the Old West here where they had flyers. They'd pass out, like, hey, who here wants to go get in some trouble, fire a gun, kill some Americans? We know where they're at. Here's a map. And pay them. And them jokers would show. I mean, it's just like that. It was like gunfight central. If you could drive around and find, like, there's some Americans right there. Don't worry. They'll come to us.
Well, earlier, when David was talking, he had said that he died days later. So when y'all got him, when you extracted him, he was still breathing? Was he conscious?
Yeah. Yes, he was still he was not conscious. He was unconscious, but he still had a pulse. His vitals were good, though weak. So
what did he get hit by? Do y'all know? Do we even know?
So yeah, it was a Mark 36 Mills bomb.
All right.
British-made grenade. Because there was, as I was investigating the scene after the incident, after Dunham, Miller, and Hampton were evacuated, I started putting all the pieces together, and they had RPGs, RPKs, AKs in that vehicle, as well as one Mills bomb grenade. And there was a safety pin to another one in the floorboard of the driver's station of that vehicle. So we think what happened was that that guy had pulled the pin on the grenade, but he kept it in his in the waistband of his trousers.
Oh yeah, came out to scrap.
Yeah.
Is that what he did?
That's crazy.
Every Mooj that we killed over there,
those
guys all carried grenades.
Oh, the grenade teams are the worst, man. The worst.
So when did he ever come to, or
no, the most significant conscious event that occurred with him was when he was evacuated to Al Asad Air Base from Al-Qaim. That day that it happened, and due to his nature of his injuries and his vital signs, he was rendered expectant, And so he was put into a small room until he passed.
Was he standing up, or was he were they on the ground when that thing detonated?
Say again?
Were they still on their feet when that thing went off, or were they fighting and already went?
No, they were. Yeah. Dunham was on top of the guy.
Oh, check. So that guy didn't make it though, right?
Well, he survived the blast, and then Sanders put a magazine in him.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead about when he was in the room.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so he was in the expectant ward, we'll call it, with Lieutenant Commander Heidi Kraft, who was a Navy psychologist down at Al-Assad, and we had a lot of casualties from the entire zone were coming in, but she knew that he was still alive, and she felt that at least he ought to have someone at his side. And she sat in there with him and talked to him. And at some point, she felt him grip her hand. And she told him, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. And he did it.
Wow.
And that's when they figured out that he was not quite expectant. And so they got him out of there and on the bird Baghdad and then Launchstool. And quickly from Launchstool, he got to Bethesda. And there his parents met him and stayed at his side until his dad, Dan, had to make the decision on the 22nd to remove him from life support. Because one of the last things that Jason had told his dad while he was on pre-deployment Christmas leave, like that whole incident where Dave Kniess wound up on a bird with Jason Dunham, that's what we're talking about. And Jason told his dad, he said, if for some reason I come back, but I'm a vegetable, I do not want to live like that. Don't let me stay like that one day if I'm going to spend the rest of my life that way, which was incredibly prescient given how it all shook out.
Yeah.
So on the 22nd, 8 days after the incident, with the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Hagee, at their side, they had Jason removed from life support at Bethesda.
Such a hard decision, but when he's the one that made it, you can't really argue with that.
I'd like to add one thing to that. Things that I have learned over the years. The day of that incident, Jason was over that insurgent, and he took off his Kevlar helmet and placed it on the grenade and then laid down on it when the explosion went off. And Trent can attest to this other thing I'm going to say, and he can explain it better. 2 weeks before that, there was a conversation going around, and Jason was talking about, what would you do if there was a live grenade in front of you? What would you do? And Jason told Bull Robinson, his platoon commander, well, what if you put your Kevlar on? And I'll let Trent tell that story. But it was just incredible to hear.
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, that was a really long day. And it all really started when I got to the scene of the incident, and we had heard gunfire from Dunham's element, and we started running towards the sound of it. And the sniper that I had brought along on the patrol to reconnoiter sniper positions for the patrol base. He cut us short and told us to head south and cut off a vehicle that they had seen fleeing the scene. So we pushed south towards the train tracks there at the southern end of the village and didn't see any civilian vehicles. But then two of my Humvees raced by, going as fast as a Humvee can go. They actually, both of them flew off a 3-foot embankment without even so much as braking. And that was the ground evac that was responding to Sanders' call on the radio to evacuate those Freedom Marines. So by the time we finally made radio contact again with Hampton and Dunham's element, I got to the scene, and there was this Toyota Land Cruiser with all 4 doors open and a bunch of weapons stacked against the wall. And I walked right up to Ferg, who was standing in the middle of that dirt road in front of the vehicle. And I didn't even say a thing. He just started off and he said, "Hey, sir, Hampton and Miller are going to be okay." And there was something about the way he said it that implied someone wasn't going to be okay. And I said, "What the fuck are you saying?" He said, "It's Dunham." And anyway, we secured the site and I started inspecting the weapons that had come out of there. And Ferg explained the grenade that they had found and the safety pin to the other grenade. And as I was looking at the weapons stacked up against the wall, I saw something that appeared to be Kevlar. And I picked it up and it was flat. And because it was flat, I assumed that maybe it had been part of a Humvee door, because armored Humvees, the doors are armored with layers of Kevlar. And we had our battalion's first casualties had occurred, I think, on the 17th of March, probably 200-300 meters from where we stood, where a vehicle had struck an anti-tank mine and had killed 2 Marines. And in intervening days, we had rolled up a couple of insurgents in town that had a cellular phone, a GPS with grid coordinates inside the battalion firm base. And they had one of the Marines who'd been killed was a PFC Smith. They had his ID card. So we knew that they were scrubbing the kill sites. And I thought that maybe they had just had a piece of Kevlar from one of the doors. But as I was inspecting it, there was a familiar shape to it. And I realized it was the shape of the ear scoop on the side of our Kevlar helmet. And then I realized I was holding a piece of an American helmet, but it was flat. Mm. And I turned to Ferg and I said, "Where's Dunham's helmet?" And so he called to the Marines to grab Dunham's gear, and they had his deuce gear and his rifle, but they didn't have his helmet. And I'm looking around me, and for the first time I realized there were tiny scraps of Kevlar covering that road. Probably over 100 square foot area was Kevlar scraps. And I told Ferg, "We need to pick this shit up. I want every single piece of it up." Because the last thing I wanted the enemy to know was that they could get to us. And one of the Marines had a couple of 2-gallon Ziploc bags in his butt pack. So they broke those out and they policed up all the Kevlar, and it filled 2-gallon Ziploc bags, 4 gallons of Kevlar on that road. And so I just assumed that Dunham had been facing the grenade when it went off, and it had ripped his helmet off his head and blown it apart. 2 days later, I was sitting in Kilo 4's platoon area just to get my finger on the pulse and see how they were doing. And I was sitting on Sanders' cot with him, and he started telling this story, one that Dave alluded to 2 weeks earlier when they were still working for Lima Company and Captain Gannon up at the Huseba firm base. They were between patrols, and Marines were talking about the kind of shit that Marines talk about in combat. And the topic came up, what do you do with a live grenade? And Dunham had this idea that if you covered it with your Kevlar, that it would suppress the blast. And so he and Lieutenant Robinson and Staff Sergeant Ferguson were having this discussion about it. And Robinson said, well, first off, there's no way you could even get your helmet off in time because a grenade has a 3 to 5 second fuse. And Dunham said, really? And he stepped away and he came back with his helmet on his head. And he looked at Lieutenant Robinson and he said, time me. So Bull hit the timer on his G-Shock, and within a second, Dunham tilted his head forward and slapped his helmet on the deck. And when I heard Sanders relaying that story, they were sitting on his cot, I understood exactly what had happened.
Wow.
And so I went straight over to the battalion CP to Lieutenant Colonel Lopez's office. And I explained to him what I had just heard. And he looked at me and he said 3 words. He said, write it up. So I went back to the company CP and I grabbed my XO, Lieutenant Rudy Salcido, and I grabbed Robinson. And I told this young second lieutenant who had been a platoon commander for all of 4 freaking months that he needed to write a Medal of Honor citation.
That's incredible.
That don't happen very often.
No.
How about that, man?
Yeah, that's incredible.
How about that? To think like that, to think like that. We all know in the moment when that stuff starts slowing down and speeding back up, but to have the wherewithal to do that. Our boys that jump on the grenades are a different breed altogether.
Mm-hmm.
They just are.
Yeah.
We got a few of them.
The thing about Dunham, the thing that hits you about it, and knowing what I know of him now, you know, he loved his Marines so much. He didn't just take care of them, he practiced taking care of them. Who fucking practices covering a live grenade with their helmet?
Yeah. He obviously had like a God wink, like a premonition of this can happen one day. Work on it. I mean, from what he told his dad at Christmas, and then practicing that, having those discussions with his teammates, like there was something in his head that knew this might happen. This is a possibility.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Now. All right.
That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing his story. And
yeah, what do we need to do, man?
Yeah.
How can we help you guys?
When does it
help
come
the Dunham
out?
family, or what do we?
We're still talking to people about distribution. A lot of the mainstreamers, I don't think, are interested in it. You know, we're thinking about self-releasing. I have 2 versions of this. I have a 2-hour version, which I've been running around at all the festivals, but I have a 5-part series, which is what I'm trying to push towards streamers. So we're thinking about self-releasing this thing. We haven't made a decision yet. I'm still in talks with a few people. It's going to get out there one way or the other. We set up a website for people to go to sign up for news on the actual release. and the trailers on there and stuff like that. So it's going to get out there. We just don't know when.
Oh,
yet.
sure. And you got a Christmas present too. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of getting the audience, and we can help you out with that, man.
So are you going to
absolutely.
go around and do more soft releases, like kind of fundraiser style?
Yeah, I've been in talks with Medal of Honor Museum in Texas, and I approached them after a Medal of Honor place in Chattanooga reached out and asked if we would like to do a screening there. So I contacted the museum. I've been talking to them, and I said, hey guys, I said, why don't we do, I said, I would love to screen the gift for you guys, and you guys can wrap a whole fundraiser around it and raise money for the Medal of Honor Museum.
Oh, sure.
So we're talking about doing that and getting the word out with that. And there's the Medal of Honor Society in South Carolina. I'm talking to them about doing that as well. I've talked to Jason Van Camp. We're gonna talk about doing something for Warrior Rising, do some kind of fundraiser and screening here in Salt Lake. So we're, I'm still pushing it.
It's not hard to get the word out about the Honor Boys.
Yeah.
They're a select group.
If you want us
You know
to
what I'm talking
host a screening in Houston, we can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
But what?
Absolutely.
What's the website? Can you tell our
Yeah, how can people find it and track you down? If you could give us all that before we.
Watchthegift.com. You can find all our social media stuff on there as well. That'll basically get you connected with everything.
Social media and all that stuff, Andrew.
We'll plug it. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, Andrew's got all that. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank y'all so much for telling
Yeah,
the
man.
story.
Anything else,
And
Right on, brother. Keep us posted, man, and we'll Andrew
Yeah.
and everybody will let you know when this drops.
yeah, it's an incredible story.
Absolutely,
We'll
man.
have to
Yeah,
share
it was good to
with
meet you,
everybody.
Dave. Good to see you again, brother, man.
Yeah, you too. I appreciate it, man.
All right, y'all. God bless.
Thanks,
man.
guys.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Trent. Okay.